My name is Madeline Carter. I'm 31 years old. And the strange thing about the moment a relationship truly breaks is that it rarely announces itself. There's no music, no dramatic silence, no warning sharp enough to make your body brace. Sometimes it starts in a kitchen. Sometimes it starts with something as ordinary as pasta water boiling over, and a sentence so calm, so reasonable, that your mind doesn't catch the damage until it's already done. 3 weeks ago, I still believed I had a future with my family. Or maybe that's not the honest way to say it. 3 weeks ago, I still believed my family wanted a future with me in it. The morning everything fell apart didn't feel important at first. It felt messy. I couldn't find my flip-flops, even though I was sure I'd left them in the hallway closet. My sunscreen leaked all over the inside of my bag, turning everything slightly greasy. The zipper on my duffel snapped open like it had been waiting for the worst possible moment to give up on me. I remember standing there, staring at it, thinking, of course. Even my charger was wrong, some old phone I hadn't used in years. And halfway to my parents' house, I realized I'd forgotten to refill my prescription. Everything that could go wrong did. But I kept telling myself it didn't matter, because we were going to Hawaii, the first real family trip in years. Just the 5 of us. Me, my parents, my older sister Sarah, and her husband Daniel. We'd been talking about it since spring. A beach house. Sunlight. Something that almost felt like a reset. Something that felt normal again. My parents told me to come by the night before the flight. It made sense. Early departure. Easier to leave together. I even picked up snacks for the plane. Little things Sarah liked. Things my mom always forgot but appreciated when they magically appeared. I had sunscreen on already. Too early, I know. Music playing, windows down. I remember smiling to myself as I pulled into the driveway just as the sun was starting to dip. It felt like the beginning of something good. I grabbed my bag, walked up to the door, and knocked. My mom opened it. She didn't look surprised to see me. She looked inconvenienced. Just slightly. Like I had shown up too early for something I wasn't supposed to attend. And then she said it. You weren't actually on the guest list. We figured you'd be fine alone. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it didn't make sense. I waited for the rest of the sentence. The correction. The just kidding, it never came. Behind her, I could see everything. Suitcases lined neatly by the stairs. A cooler. Sun hats. Passports laid out on the hallway table. Sarah and Daniel were in the living room, laughing over something on her phone like it was any other night. Like nothing had just been removed. What are you talking about? I asked. My voice sounded thinner than I expected. She gave me this look, like she was trying to soften something that couldn't be softened. Sarah's had a rough time lately, she said. She asked if we could make this trip just about her and Daniel. No stress, no tension, no tension. I stood there, still holding my bag. You two haven't been getting along, she added gently. And we agreed. It might be better this way. Better. For who? I didn't ask, because suddenly I understood. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a miscommunication. They had planned the entire trip around me. Just not with me. I looked past her one last time. My dad was in the kitchen, facing away, pretending to stir something that clearly wasn't cooking. He didn't turn around, didn't say my name, didn't even acknowledge that I was standing there. That was the moment it landed. Not the words, not the explanation. That, the silence. I nodded. I don't remember deciding to leave. I just did. Back in my car, I sat there for a few minutes. Not angry. Not yet. Just embarrassed. Not just because they excluded me, but because I hadn't seen it coming. All those vague conversations over the past few months. We'll let you know. We're still figuring things out. I thought they were disorganized. I thought they were busy. I thought I was included. At 10:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. A Venmo request from my mom. $5,100. Your share of flights and villa. I stared at it for a long time. Then I laughed. This time, it sounded different. I sent back $1 with a note. You'll have a surprise. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I opened my laptop, checked the flight I suspected they were on. There were still seats available. Same time, same gate. Same destination. I booked one. If they wanted peace, I would give it to them. Just not the kind they were expecting. I barely slept that night. Not because I was second-guessing myself, because once the shock wore off, something colder moved in. Not rage. Rage burns too brightly. It consumes itself too fast. What I felt was cleaner than that. Sharper. The kind of quiet that arrives when something inside you finally stops begging to be chosen. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the glow of the screen painting everything in that strange pale blue that makes even familiar rooms feel temporary. Outside, the The city had gone still. Inside, I was booking the version of Hawaii they never intended for me to have. Same flight, same departure time, same airport, but not the same experience. I found a private beachfront cabana at a luxury estate about 20 minutes up the coast from the main resort district. Ocean view, separate entrance, infinity pool, a deck that opened directly onto the sand. It was expensive enough to feel reckless. I booked it anyway. Then I saw the line for guest notes and paused. I should tell you this honestly. I did not think of it as revenge at first. At first, it felt like symmetry, a correction, a way of answering their cruelty in a language they would understand. So I typed that the Carter family preferred early check-in and would appreciate a bottle of champagne on arrival. Then, and just like that, I stopped being the daughter left behind and became the woman with a plan. I got to the airport early. Earlier, I parked in long-term parking like I belonged there, like I was exactly what I appeared to be, another traveler heading out for a week in paradise. I wore a hoodie, even though it was too warm for one, and kept my headphones on, even without music playing. Not because I was hiding exactly, because I wanted to choose the moment I was seen. And not at the gate, I spotted them almost immediately. My father stood with his usual travel folder tucked under his arm, like printed itineraries still mattered in a world where everything lived on phones. My mother was checking her watch every few seconds, tapping her foot in that tiny, irritated rhythm she used when she felt life should be moving faster around her. Sarah had a designer neck pillow looped over her suitcase handle, and Daniel was leaning close to show her something on his screen. She laughed. I watched that laugh for a second too long, because it wasn't just happiness, it was ease. The kind of ease people have when they believe they've successfully removed the inconvenient person from the story. I waited until final boarding, then I slipped past them with the last group, head down, shoulders loose. No one noticed me, not one of them. And somehow that hurt more than if they had. The plane was full. I took a middle seat near the back and kept my gaze lowered while people fought over overhead bin space and armrests and who had the window. The woman beside me smelled like coconut lotion and kept apologizing every time her elbow brushed mine. I told her it was fine. I even smiled. I slept through most of the flight. Or maybe slept isn't the right word. I drifted in and out of a numb, suspended state where every time I opened my eyes, I half expected the last 12 hours to rearrange themselves into something reasonable. They never did. At some point over the Pacific, I looked up and saw Sarah, 3 rows ahead, laughing again. Daniel said something into her ear. My mother turned around in her seat and smiled at them. My father was looking out the window. There they were, my family, whole without me. And for the first time in my life, I let that truth sit where it belonged, instead of scrambling to explain it away. When we landed, I stayed seated a little longer. Let them rush off first. Let them move toward the version of the week they thought they'd curated. By the time I stepped into arrivals, my phone was still silent. No one had noticed I was there. No one had checked. And then I saw him. A driver in a crisp white shirt, holding a sign that read, Carter Family. I nearly laughed. He took my bag with both hands, warm and efficient, and led me outside to a black SUV chilled so perfectly it felt unreal after the airport humidity. There were cold towels in a silver tray, bottled water, a basket of fresh fruit I didn't recognize. No tension. No explanations. No one asking me to make myself smaller. The driver called me Ms. Carter, with the kind of practiced politeness that comes from dealing with people who expect to be looked after. I almost corrected him, then I didn't. The estate was tucked along a quieter stretch of coastline, far enough from the main resorts to feel private, but close enough to the rest of the island that everything still seemed accessible. The check-in desk was open air, framed by polished wood and white stone and flowering vines that looked almost too perfect to be real. A woman greeted me with a calm smile. Aloha, Ms. Carter. We've got everything ready for you and your guests. I held her gaze for half a second. They'll be joining later, I said. That was all. No lies, exactly. Just an unfinished sentence. She handed me the key card inside a woven sleeve, and someone else appeared to lead me to the cabana. When I stepped inside, I stopped moving, because it was beautiful. Not dramatic, not flashy. Beautiful in that quiet, impossible way that makes your shoulders drop before you realize they were tense. The room opened out to glass doors, and beyond them, ocean. Blue so clean it looked invented. A hammock tied between 2 palms, a private plunge pool catching the sunlight like it had been placed there for someone who finally understood what rest was supposed to feel like. I set my bag down and walked barefoot across the deck. The sand started only a few feet away. No hallways, no elevators, no family. Just space. So much space. I stood there, with the wind lifting my hair, and thought, very clearly, they wanted me alone. They just never imagined alone could look like this. I knew where they were staying, a family-friendly resort farther down the coast. Decent, but crowded. Shared villa, limited beach access. The kind of place that tries very hard to create memories in bulk. That first night, after a shower and a room service dinner I barely touched, I walked near their side of the property line. I stayed far enough away not to be seen, but close enough to watch. There they were. My mother gesturing sharply at a front desk worker. My father pinching the bridge of his nose. Sarah stiff with fury. Daniel holding both suitcases, like a man who knew enough not to say anything yet. Even from a distance, I could read it. Something had gone wrong. Or rather, something had gone right. What happened was simple. The Carter name had already been used for the premium check-in note and the upgraded beachfront lodging on file elsewhere. Their own booking at the resort hadn't disappeared completely, but the confusion around names and assumptions had stripped all the perks Sarah had clearly been expecting. No upgrade, no oceanfront room, no champagne, no special treatment. Just the downgraded reality of what remained. A smaller villa, further from the beach. No view worth photographing. The resort had apologized, of course. Polite regret, limited availability, nothing more to be done. I watched Sarah's posture from across the walkway and knew exactly how she was taking it, as a personal insult from the universe. I went back to my cabana before anyone saw me. That night, I slept with the glass doors cracked open so I could hear the ocean. The next morning felt unreal. The kind of morning people describe in brochures and then fail to capture because the actual thing is too sensory, too precise. The breeze came in soft. The water was almost silent. Someone delivered a tray of tropical fruit and coffee to my deck, and for 20 full minutes, I just sat there staring at the horizon, unable to remember the last time no one needed something from me. No criticism, no emotional accounting, no role to play. By 9 o'clock, the messages started. First, from my mother. Did you do something with our reservation? I didn't answer. Then Sarah. We need to talk. Something weird is going on with the villa. That one made me smile, despite myself. A voice note followed. Then another. I ignored both. An hour later, my father called. Then again. Then a third time. By then, I was sitting by the pool with sunglasses on, a book open in my lap that I hadn't actually started reading. On the fourth call, I answered. Madeline, he said immediately, low and furious, like he was trying to sound controlled for his own benefit. Did you book something under our name? I let a beat pass. Yes. Silence. Then, why would you do that? And there it was, the question beneath all the others. Not, why were you excluded? Not, how did this happen? Just, why would you refuse to disappear quietly? I looked out at the water, because suddenly, the answer felt very easy. I figured you'd be fine alone, I said. He hung up. No argument. No defense. Just silence snapping shut like a door. That afternoon, I met Cassie and Joy at breakfast. They were seated at the table next to mine, both sun-kissed and loud in the easy, unself-conscious way of women who had known each other long enough to speak in half sentences. Cassie was all quick wit and expressive eyebrows. Joy had a slower, warmer energy, the kind that made people confess things without meaning to. They were supposed to be there for a bachelorette party that had fallen apart at the last minute, some cheating scandal back in Seattle, half the group canceling, the bride vanishing into a spiral of rage and tequila. Honestly, Cassie said, lifting her mimosa, we decided not to waste the flights on a man none of us liked anyway. I laughed. A real laugh. It startled me. Joy smiled at me over the rim of her coffee cup. You look like someone who needed that. Needed what? To laugh before noon. That should have felt too personal from a stranger. Instead, it felt strangely kind. We spent the rest of the morning talking. Not deeply. Not yet. Just enough for me to remember how easy conversation can be when it isn't weighted with family history and invisible landmines. They joined me for drinks later that afternoon by the pool. Then dinner on the deck. Then sunset from the beach. Nothing romantic. Nothing complicated. Just laughter, salt air, and the dizzying realization that I was having a better time with two women I had met that day than I had with my own family in years. The following day was even better. I went snorkeling in water so clear it made everything on land feel muted by comparison. When I came back, I passed Sarah on a beach path near a crowded bar. She looked sunburned and annoyed, one sandal half undone, sunglasses shoved into her hair. Daniel was a few feet behind her, carrying towels and a plastic bag from a resort gift shop. She saw me and stopped. Actually stopped. Not a stumble, not a double take, a full body freeze. I was in a linen cover-up over my swimsuit, skin still cool from the water. A massage appointment waiting for me in an hour. For one suspended second, neither of us moved. Her face changed 3 times in a blink. Confusion, recognition, then fury. But underneath it, something else. Humiliation. I didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't offer an explanation. I just kept walking. And that, more than anything I'd done so far, seemed to unravel her. That night, Cassie and Joy came back to the cabana with takeout desserts and a speaker small enough to fit in a tote bag. We watched the sunset from the deck, while soft music played and the sky turned the kind of pink that almost looks embarrassing until you remember nature rarely cares about subtlety. At one point, Joy stretched out across the daybed and said, "This place is ridiculous. Like heartbreak recovery camp for hot people." Cassie snorted into her drink. I smiled, but something in me tightened around that phrase. Heartbreak. Because that was what this was, wasn't it? Not just betrayal. Not just family dysfunction. Heartbreak. The kind that happens when people you've loved your whole life reveal that loving you has always been conditional. I didn't say that out loud. Instead, I tipped my face toward the last of the sunlight and let the music carry over me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was orbiting around someone else's emotional weather. I felt still, like all the noise they had built around me had finally moved far enough away for me to hear my own thoughts. And somewhere down the coast, I knew my family was angry, confused, already rewriting the story in a way that would make me the selfish one. Let them. I was done trying to earn a seat at a table that only noticed my absence when it became inconvenient. The peace I wanted was no longer something I hoped they'd give me. It was something I had taken, and I was only beginning to understand how good that could feel. The photo wasn't supposed to mean anything. That's the part I kept coming back to later. It wasn't staged. It wasn't calculated. It wasn't even particularly flattering. Just the three of us on the boat, wind in our hair, drinks in hand, the ocean stretched out behind us like something endless and forgiving. Joy posted it without asking, not because she was careless, because in her world, moments like that didn't require permission. They were just lived. I didn't think twice about it. Not until we got back to the cabana and I checked my phone. 5 missed calls from my dad. A message waiting underneath. Delete the photo. This is going too far. You're deliberately humiliating the family. I stared at it for a long second. Then another message came in. Sarah, you're not even pretending anymore. Is this some kind of pathetic performance? And finally, my mom. We've supported you for years. You were always different, but we never made you feel that way. I don't know what's changed in you, but this is cruel. Supported you. That phrase sat in my chest like something heavy and misplaced. Supported me, as if I had been a project. As if my existence had always required adjustment. As if love had been something they extended. Carefully. Conditionally. As long as I didn't disrupt the version of the family they preferred. I reread that message twice. Then I locked my phone and set it face down on the table. Cassie glanced at me from the edge of the couch. Bad news? Old news, I said. She didn't press. That was the thing about her and Joy. They didn't circle you when you were bleeding. They just sat beside you until you decided whether to speak. That afternoon, we went into town. A small harbor, tucked just far enough from the resorts to feel local. Joy had found a boat tour run by a retired marine biologist who only took small groups. No crowds, no noise. Just open water and the promise of something real. It ended up being just the three of us. We took turns diving, swam alongside sea turtles that moved like they had nowhere else to be, drank from coconuts cracked open right there on the boat. At one point, Cassie leaned back against the railing, eyes closed, sun catching the freckles across her nose. "Is this what life's supposed to feel like?" she asked. Joy laughed softly. "God, I hope so." They both looked at me, waiting, not for an answer, just including me in the moment. I opened my mouth, then closed it again, because the truth was, I didn't know. But I knew it wasn't supposed to feel like what I had left behind. We got back just before sunset. The light hit the water in that soft, gold way that makes everything look like it belongs to a different version of the world. And that's when I saw the missed calls. Again, this time, more. My dad. My mom. Sarah. Over and over. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I didn't need to. I already knew the tone. Demanding. Offended. Certain they were entitled to an explanation. I ignored them. Every single one. That night, Cassie and Joy went into town to check out a live music bar. They invited me. I almost said yes. But something in me shifted. "I think I'm going to stay in tonight," I told them. Joy studied me for a second. "You sure?" "Yeah," I said. "I just need a quiet night." She nodded. No judgment. No persuasion. Just acceptance. "Text us if you change your mind." I didn't. The beach was nearly empty. The kind of empty that doesn't feel lonely. Just spacious. I walked barefoot along the edge of the water, letting the waves break around my ankles, the salt drying slowly against my skin. And that's when I saw him. Daniel, sitting, a beer in his hand, staring out at the ocean like it had answers he hadn't found yet. He saw me. Didn't look surprised. Didn't look uncomfortable. Just lifted the bottle slightly in acknowledgement, like we were two strangers who happened to recognize each other. I hesitated, then sat down a few feet away. Neither of us spoke for a while. The silence wasn't awkward. It was, "They're unraveling," he said finally. His voice was calm, matter of fact. Like you, I let out a quiet breath. I figured. He took a sip of his beer. "Your mom cried earlier. Sarah's been slamming doors. Your dad's trying to fix it, but he doesn't even know what it is." I glanced at him. "And you?" He shrugged slightly. "I stay out of it." That sounded about right. We sat there a little longer, the tide creeping closer to the wall. Then I asked the question I already knew the answer to. Did she ask them to leave me out? Daniel didn't respond right away. He watched the water, finished his beer, then said quietly, "Yeah." No hesitation, no softening, just the truth. "It was her idea," he added. "They went along with it because it seemed easier than dealing with another fight." Another fight. I let that settle, because suddenly, everything made sense. Not just the trip, not just the exclusion. Years of small moments. Conversations that shifted when I walked into the room. Decisions made for the sake of peace. Peace, apparently, meant removing me. I nodded slowly. "I don't think you're wrong," Daniel said after a moment. "For what you did." That surprised me. He glanced over at me, almost apologetic. "I probably shouldn't say that." "No," I said quietly. "You probably shouldn't." But I was glad he did. We didn't talk much after that. Didn't need to. Some truths don't require discussion once they've been spoken out loud. When I stood up to leave, he didn't try to stop me. Didn't offer advice. Just said, "They're going to keep coming after you when we get back." I nodded. "I know." Back at the cabana, the lights were low. Cassie and Joy had come back earlier than expected. Both of them were curled up on the daybed, half asleep under a light blanket, music playing softly from someone's phone. I grabbed a bottle of water and sat down on the edge of the deck. Joy opened one eye when I sat. "You okay?" she murmured. "Yeah," I said. She studied me for half a second, then nodded and closed her eyes again. That was it. No interrogation, no expectation, just trust. I leaned back in my chair and stared out at the ocean. Let everything settle. Let the anger rise and fall, and then disappear into something quieter. Because that was the strangest part of all of this. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I was done. Done explaining. Done adjusting. Done trying to earn something that should have been given freely. Let them call. Let them text. Let them rewrite the story however they needed to. For the first time in my life, I wasn't participating. The flight home felt like a mirror. Same plane, same route, same people. But everything had shifted. I boarded early this time. Window seat near the back. Headphones on. A quiet claim to space that no one could take from me. They came in a few minutes later. My parents, Sarah, Daniel. They looked tired, sunburned. Not speaking to each other, not laughing, not whole. I watched them without being seen. Or maybe they saw me and chose not to engage. Either way, it didn't matter. Because the feeling I expected, triumph, satisfaction, even bitterness, never came. There was just nothing. A clean, empty kind of quiet. Back home, the silence didn't last long. 2 days later, the messages started again. From my mom. "We've decided to pause communication for a while. Emotions are still high. You crossed a line, Madeline." From my dad. "We hope you reflect on your choices and the damage caused." Damage. That word almost made me laugh, but the real message came the same way it had before. Money. Another request. $5,100. Flights and villa. I denied it. They sent it again. I denied it again. Then I blocked both of them. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Sarah didn't block me. She did something worse. She kept texting. Not to talk. To provoke. "Hope your little stunt was worth it. You really think this makes you look strong? It's pathetic. You've always been selfish. Don't expect this to just go away." I didn't respond. Not once. She escalated. Voice messages. 3, 4 in a row. I deleted them all without listening, because I already knew what they would say, and for the first time, I didn't care. At work, when people asked about Hawaii, I smiled. "Quiet," I said. Exactly what I needed. No one questioned it. No one pushed, because the truth was, it had been exactly what I needed. Not the trip, not the setting, the distance, the clarity. The moment I realized I didn't have to keep shrinking myself just to stay included. A week later, my dad sent an email. Subject line: "Family boundaries going forward." I didn't open it. I archived it, because whatever boundaries they were trying to draw, I had already stepped outside of them. By the end of the month, I deleted the family group chat, removed every shared calendar event, birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, gone, not out of spite, out of finality. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It wasn't sad. It was clean. And that was the part no one prepares you for. The absence of chaos doesn't feel empty. It feels like space. And space can be the beginning of something entirely different. By October, it had been almost 3 months since Hawaii. 3 months of silence. No calls, no birthdays, no accidental check-ins disguised as just thinking of you, nothing. At first, I noticed it constantly, the absence. The way my phone stayed quiet in moments it used to interrupt. The way certain dates passed without acknowledgement. The strange emptiness where obligation used to live. But then, something shifted. Entire days went by without me thinking about them. Then weeks. Not because I was trying to forget, because I had finally stopped waiting. I moved closer to the coast, not impulsively, not dramatically, just quietly. A small place with wide windows and a kitchen that got real sunlight in the mornings. Close enough to hear the ocean if the night was still. I took on more freelance clients. Let my schedule become something I actually chose instead of something I adjusted around everyone else's expectations. And slowly, I started sleeping through the night again. That was how I knew something inside me had healed. Not perfectly, but enough. I met Ethan Hayes at a gallery opening in late October. He wasn't loud. Didn't try too hard. Didn't ask questions that felt like traps disguised as curiosity. We started talking near a painting neither of us understood. "Do you think it means something?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. "Or are we all just pretending it does?" I smiled. "I think pretending is part of the experience." He laughed. Not performative, not calculated, just real. We got coffee a few days later, then dinner, then something softer. Steadier. He didn't push for details about my past, and I didn't offer them. For the first time in a long time, I existed in a space that didn't require explanation. It felt safe. Not the kind of safe that comes from familiarity. The kind that comes from being seen, and not reduced. By November, my life didn't feel like something I was rebuilding. It felt like something entirely new. Quieter. Cleaner. Mine. And then, on a Tuesday night, at exactly 8:30, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. No delivery. No plans. No messages warning me someone was on their way. For a second, I considered ignoring it. But something about the timing, something about the weight of it, made me pause. I walked to the door slowly, opened it, and there she was. Sarah. She looked different. Not in a dramatic falling apart way. In a way that felt quieter than that. Like someone who had been holding something heavy for too long. Her hair was pulled back loosely, darker than I remembered. No makeup. A windbreaker I was almost certain I'd seen her wear years ago, back when things between us still made sense. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just stood there. Two versions of a relationship that didn't exist anymore. Then she said it. "Mom's in the hospital." The words didn't land right away. They hovered. Out of place. Disconnected from everything I had carefully built since the last time I saw her. "What happened?" I asked. "Heart attack," she said. "Mild. They said she'll recover." A pause. Then, "She asked for you." That part hit differently. Not louder. Deeper. I felt something shift inside my chest. Subtle, but undeniable. "She said your name before mine," Sarah added. I searched her face, looking for something, anything, that would tell me whether this was manipulation or truth. But Sarah wasn't good at pretending. Not like that. Not this version of her. She reached into her pocket and handed me a folded piece of paper. "From her," she said. I unfolded it slowly. "Hotel stationery. One line. If I was wrong, I'm sorry. I love you either way." No signature. No explanation. No attempt to justify. Just that. I stared at the words longer than I meant to, because they didn't sound like her, not the version of her I had known. The one who smoothed things over, who reframed, who chose comfort over confrontation. This felt stripped down, unfinished, honest, maybe, or maybe just desperate. I didn't ask. "She's scared you won't come," Sarah said quietly. I looked up. "Because you're angry?" I asked. Sarah shook her head. "No." A beat. "Because she thinks you've actually moved on." That was the first honest thing she had said to me in a long time, maybe ever. And it landed harder than anything else that night. Because it was true. I had moved on. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough that the idea of stepping back into that world felt distant, like revisiting a place that no longer recognized me. Or worse, a place I no longer recognized. "How did you get here?" I asked. "Rideshare," she said. "My car's in the shop." That almost made me smile. The Sarah I remembered wouldn't have been caught without her car, wouldn't have shown up unannounced, wouldn't have stood on my doorstep looking like she didn't know what came next. She turned before I could say anything else. walked back down the path without waiting for an answer. No pressure, no argument, just left. I closed the door slowly, locked it, then leaned back against it, the note still in my hand. The apartment felt different, smaller somehow, like the past had found a way inside without asking permission. I walked to the kitchen, set the note down on the table, stared at it. An hour later, my phone buzzed. "Ethan, want me to come over?" I looked at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Not tonight. It's been a weird day." He didn't ask questions, just replied, "Okay, I'm here if you need me." Simple.
Steady.
Enough! I didn't go to the hospital.
Not that night.
Not the next morning. I didn't call, didn't text, didn't ask for updates, but I didn't throw the note away either. It's still on my kitchen table, folded, waiting. And for now, that's all I'm ready to give. Not forgiveness, not closure, just space. The same thing they once decided I didn't deserve. And maybe that's the part none of them understand. This was never about revenge. Not really. It was about learning that peace doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't beg to be understood. It just exists quietly while everything else keeps screaming. That's the last I'll say about them. We don't talk anymore. And for the first time in my life, I don't miss it.